So much like in the comics, we're now at a point where more than one wears the mask. Originally, Big PP was the sole protector, now hundreds fall under the mantle of Spider-Man, but none more as prominent as Miles Morales, the new lead in arguably the best Spider-Man film ever made. I'm sorry, Raimi fans, I can't apologize enough.
You know how much I sacrificed?
It amazes me to think that what we consider to be a good Spider-Man film has been completely eclipsed by something so ambitious and created with so much love and care. No giant corporation like Sony has any right to make something this good. We've been shortchanged and misled as to what makes a good Spider-Man film. Hell, a good superhero film. And a prime example of this would be the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. Disclaimer, I love the MCU, it just seems a bit barren and shallow and vapid at some point. I'm gonna say some bad things now, but it's just like, I just want you to know that I still love you. Because the MCU is so vast and ever expanding, it's always introducing new characters and storylines that fans of the comics have always wanted to see on the big screen. However, the problem with this is that they often come in a diluted form and they don't necessarily feel like a full arc in terms of a story. MCU films always feel like they're catching a viewer up in the space of time a character hasn't been on screen, which in some cases could literally be years to a viewer. For example, at the end of The Winter Soldier, we see a confused and conflicted Bucky Barnes finding out about his forgotten past, and that's it. We don't see him again until Civil War, in which he's just walking around Bucharest, is that the place? I don't know. With no reason as to why. We don't know how we got there, and there are so many loose ends in the MCU like this. It's almost like Marvel don't think we're clever enough to think, where has this interesting character been, and why is he here now? Did he face conflicts along the way? Did he find peace within himself and come to terms with who he is? Can I stop doing this voice now? But instead they shove Bucky on screen in a film way down the line and expect us to scream when he reappears like he's an old friend to us. But it's not a friend, it's a film, therefore it's shit fan service. They have sacrificed character development for the sake of moving a story along, which completely takes the viewer out the story. Part of what makes comic book characters so interesting is the complexity of them, and when you strip away the personality of a character to ultimately being dark and just wanting to hit things, there's not a lot of emotional investment there for a viewer to latch onto. I'm gonna sneeze, fuck. Ugh. This is where Spider-Verse comes in and takes over. Literally from the first seconds of the opening credits, you knew you're in for something special. Who the fuck spends that much time on editing credits like that? People who care, that's who. The high nerd Supreme Court dictated that the origin story is the bane of all superhero movie existence. An intolerable arc that consists mainly of a person getting affected by a thing, that thing turns them into something new, the person doesn't like that change, the person then has to accept that change and the new life that comes with it. That's that. And that's been a solid run-of-the-mill formula that has plagued screens for about 2 decades now. Kind of because of the whole Raimi trilogy and X-Men and all that kind of stuff outside the MCU, but that's where the templates came from. As we enter the Spider-Verse, we are greeted with Prime PP's origin story and literally everything he's ever done that shapes a character, playing on the idea that the viewer has seen the previous Spider-Mans and Spidelmans and gets rewarded for it with little Easter eggs. And if you haven't seen them, that's alright. This is a crash course in Spider-Man, so even if you haven't seen any of the other films, you learn what you need to know from this introduction. That's just good storytelling. But then the film cuts to Miles packing his bags, leaving to school and ending up in his dad's police car. And in this moment between a father and son, it shows more emotion in the first opening minutes than the MCU does in several films of the same franchise. The long glance in the rearview mirror from Jefferson Davis after he realizes he's going too hard on his son quickly turns to a look of regret. He realizes he's being harsh and has distanced himself from his son despite simply wanting the best for him. This is shown by Miles in the back seat whilst his dad is driving, showing a physical rift as well. The second look quickly turns into a jovial, playful look as he wants to connect with Miles, and he knows that he still wants to be close to him despite often being the voice of authority. He knows that he can't be ruling with an iron fist and an open palm at the same time, which leads to this rift between the two. They love each other, but they don't know how to open up and connect to one another, and this is a rift that is a driving force throughout the entire film. All of this takes place in about 15 seconds. This is absolutely amazing storytelling from a non-verbal standpoint and from a directorial standpoint. It's making my PP all hard, not that one.
This could literally not get any weirder.
The big super secret trick that this film has done is that they've made the character moments just as important as the action scenes. Watching this film, I was just as compelled watching Miles' regular life compared to watching actual Spider-Man shit happen. And that's often been the downfall of the MCU films. There is so much happening in terms of plot development, there is no time to slow down and go, hey, what are you about? What's your deal? Stop fucking flying. I just want to know about. Stop flying. Fuck. Spider-Verse feels like a Spider-Verse feels like a self-contained story compared to the MCU's version, in which it's a series of loose ends that may never be tied up, leaving the viewer wanting more. Not through payoff, but with the promise that if you watch the next one, you'll get the closure you need to live the rest of your life. It's Stockholm Syndrome in film. Going back to the Spider-Man comparison, MCU Spidey has had everything about his personality stripped, and they simply made him a young Tony Stark lackey, briefly touching on the origin of Peter Parker before moving on to the next fight. This kid wears Spidey's gear, but Feige has essentially said, "You don't know this kid, but trust me, he's Spider-Man." They shoehorned him into a fight that was never his to begin with, and they didn't even do him the favour of introducing him in his own film first. You could argue that we all know who Spider-Man is, and we don't need another origin story, and I'd agree with you there. But the problem isn't the origin story, it's how films tell an origin story that's been the problem. Linear storytelling, where Spider-Verse deviates in its storytelling, halting the progress of a film in order to give you a crash course of several Spider people's origin story, it's still being shown in a condensed way. This is the film equivalent of tapping you on the shoulder and whispering, "Hey, who's this guy now?" On the flip side, Captain Marvel attempted this and it didn't work due to people not knowing who she is and also not feeling so compelling as a character. And she was kind of behind the whole plot in the sense that we knew who she was but she didn't, and it's just not compelling as a story, so I'm instantly out. As a result, her film felt like a disjointed mess. You put that in phase 1 however and it's a pretty good film. Another thing that made this film so endearing was the art style. Using animation this way to this degree was the biggest risk any superhero film has taken to date, and it's paid off in ways that couldn't be imagined previously. For me, this is the perfect medium for superhero storytelling, as every frame looks like a panel from a comic book. Colours, camera direction, dialogue becoming physical on screen with onomatopoeias. This is a fucking living comic book. Who knew the perfect medium for a comic book would be an animated comic book? Compared to the contrast of the MCU, it's just bland and static and generally boring landscape filled with your favourite celebrity playing dress up. The way the film is shot and the colour grading techniques on average are so run of the mill. A lot of visual appeal is lost due to the artistic direction simply being, what if superheroes inhabited our Earth? And in doing so, it's fucking boring. It's not bad, but it's been such a consistent part of the MCU for so long. Every scene feels muted as a result. Nothing pops, nothing stands out, nothing catches the eye. Superhero stories are a form of escapism, so why would I want to escape to a world that looks just like mine? The linear storytelling of origin stories does no favour either when paired with this consistently bland cinematic style. I don't believe we have superhero fatigue, I believe we have MCU fatigue. What if Spider-Verse was live action? How good do you reckon it could potentially be? Because of what a viewer has seen over the past 2 decades in film and the last decade in the MCU, there's a huge amount of desensitization relevant right now. Making it animated and animating it in such a refreshing style made every single frame a painting. Even downtime in the film was engaging because everything was so vibrant and colourful, it was refreshing. I've probably watched this film 10 or 15 times since its release on digital download, and it's never been tedious. It's never felt phoned in. Every frame belongs in a fucking museum. Can I stop wanking over this now? Cool.
Turn this thing off, I'm dry!
Where the MCU has played it safe, Sony of all companies has decided will be the ones to take the risk, and it's safe to say it's paid off. This is the same studio that made this.
Mr. Brenner, the president is waiting for you in the Oval Office.
Somebody's more important. Freddie, can you keep the riffraff out of here?
To me, personally, the best Marvel films are the ones that feature ensemble casts. After the Avengers, Civil War, Age of Ultron, Infinity War, Guardians, etc., every solo film seems so isolated and sterile because there's so much universe to see, and all you're given is this tiny fleshlight-sized hole to look through. Great analogy. What's worse is when these films go back to solo films after huge ensemble moments. Ant-Man 2 The Ant-Man and Captain Spacewoman would be good films if we weren't used to the formula, or they didn't come after the film equivalent of Crack in Infinity Fight. It felt like a hiatus, it felt like filler, it felt irrelevant, it felt like it was wasting everyone's time. Spider-Verse understood that the average superhero watching filmgoer enjoys a squad of superheroes teaming up to fight. This is why the film establishes that it's an origin story with elements of an ensemble cast to give it legs to carry it to the end. And in doing so, it does amazingly, introducing vibrant new characters to the screen in Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Man Spider-Woman, Spider-Pig, and reinventing an old classic in Peter Parker as janky, hobo, nerdly middle-aged Spider-Man. Made the main threat really fucking weird in that it's a kingpin who basically builds an interdimensional super collider to get his dick wet. This is a film I needed to see when I was 12, not for the dick wet for a human rock type thing. Inspiration personally seems to hit me harder in animated form. Being playful and disconnected from reality allows a brain to wander, and when you see Hobo Peter, you think I could be that because I'm broke as shit right now.
Lend me 50p and I'll give you a suck job.
As opposed to Chris Hemsworth is playing Thor again. It doesn't, I'm not saying I don't care, it's just that seeing something animated engages me more because I could see more of myself in that person. Spider-Verse stops becoming an acting popularity contest because there are no notable famous faces on screen. So your brain is like, hey, that could be me.
Hey.
Unless you're Nicolas Cage, you've got that Spider-Man Noir job on lock. Don't worry about that.
Who are you again?
At 9 years old, when I saw Tobey Maguire swinging on screen for the first time in a rundown cinema that I had to travel miles to another city to go to with my mum because England had introduced a new 12A policy to cinemas and local ones didn't allow me to watch it because I was too young, I felt as though this was it. This was my Star Wars. This was my Lord of the Rings. This is the film that will define my childhood and stick with me forever. No other film has questioned the placement of Raimi's Spider-Man film in terms of my rankings. My favourite character on screen in a feature-length film compared to a Saturday morning cartoon. It felt like a religious experience. Until Spider-Verse happened. It made me feel 9 years old again, and my favourite character now on screen in a feature-length film compared to a Saturday morning cartoon, and now he looked like me. Black kids don't get this. Just this disclaimer, I ain't one of these SJW affirmative action type guys. I think it's bullshit, and it's just incredible to see an A-tier character on screen who is black. Black Panther is a B+ player in a B+ film. Fight me. We get Blade and Falcon and Spawn and Static and some other shitty second-rate characters.
And a body of steel.
It's hammer time.
And I know how fucking sad it seems, but films do have that impact on people's lives, especially kids. They change people and they inspire. And then I received a text from my dad he sent me. He sent me a picture of my cousin and I broke down because what I saw was me, just coming out of the cinema with a head full of wonder and inspiration. And if I felt this kind of emotion for a film like this at 25 years old, imagine what seeing a Leap of Faith scene would do for a 9-year-old kid with a hero on screen that looked just like him. Kids are in safe hands as long as this type of film keeps being made. In summary, the Spider-Verse simply doesn't exist on the big screen without the MCU because of the escalation it's provided for viewers to get used to for almost a decade. Some of the MCU films haven't worked, but the mistakes that the MCU have made, they've rectified. And other studios have been paying attention very closely in terms of what works. And sometimes, a studio pushes the boundaries of a genre for themselves, creating an element of necessary competitiveness between studios. But sometimes they also make Venom, so you can't win them all. The point I'm trying to make is the MCU does a fantastic job of making comic books a reality, but Spider-Verse has created an emotional connection that might just inspire a generation and may never be replicated by any other superhero film ever again. I overanalyze this way too much. I love this film. Thank you for watching my video. I love you. What? Ooh.